The number one question we get asked from designers in our tool is, how do I customize the spacing of my event page? Some designers need more space included in certain blocks, others need to create less space between elements. In Designer Pro, we give the designer the keys to the Lamborghini and the Benz. Welcome to the wonderful world of margin and padding. Margin and padding are the two major properties used to control space within and around elements and blocks. Both margin and padding are used to position an element by manipulating white space. So what's the difference? In many cases, both properties can seemingly be used interchangeably to create the same visual result. However, there is a difference, and understanding that difference is an important step to building better blocks. Margin is the space that lives around the outside of an element or block, separating it from other components on your event page. Padding is the space that lives inside the element's constraints. If the content portion of your element is the bones, then think of padding as the muscle around the bone. Visually speaking, let's compare two button elements, which usually require both margin and padding. As we examine these two buttons on page, we see their widths are set to auto and that they have equal padding around all sides. To create space between the two buttons, we use margin right on button 1 and margin left on button 2. Margin and padding can be set in a variety of both relative and absolute units. It is possible to set a different unit for each side of an element. To change the unit, click on it to launch a drop-down menu displaying all available options. The relative options are percentage, rems, ems, viewport window, and viewport height. The absolute option would be pixels. Our preferred unit for margin and padding, and anything spatially related for that matter, is percentages, and here's why. Since you can never estimate what browser size someone will be viewing your page on is, setting margin and padding in absolute values like pixels does not guarantee that our design will look best at every size. However, setting margin and padding in percentages allows those values to scale fluidly with respect to the browser or window size. Let's really make sure we have padding nailed down here, especially at a block level. Let's say we want this countdown block to take up more vertical space on our event page. Well, we can simply click into the countdown block via the Layout tab, open up the Margin and Padding tab, and increase the padding on the top and bottom. Watch as the block grows more vertically because we are adding padding inside the block itself. One thing that you have to keep in mind is that margin lives around the outside of objects and is considered additional space per a single line in web design. So, if you have two elements set to be 50% wide, they can neatly stack on one line together. But if you add, let's say, 5% of margin to either element, the second element will be forced to snap to the second line, because 100% is the max total space allotted per line, and you just raised the total width to 105%. In conclusion, margin and padding are settings that help give blocks some breathing room. Padding controls the internal space within an element, and margin controls the external space around an element. And remember, stick to percentage values to keep your design scalable.